How are you feeling? Pretty good? All right. I know, the after lunch time is the most challenging. So stay awake, huh? Okay. So let's get started. Case studies in applying universal principles and shared values as a framework to address the roots of conflict. Put them on vibrate. We're live streaming, so we really want to capture this this forum. Okay. Such efforts exist in different forms: national mottos, defining documents, sharing of narratives. In this workshop, we examine the universal principles and shared values that serve as a framework for the ideas found in the, Rukun Negara in Malaysia, the Philippines' national motto, and personal narratives from Nigeria. Oh, and it's also Pancasila in Indonesia. The session will also cover methods to engage the vision of one family under God in national and global conversations. So I'm very happy to introduce to you our moderator, Reverend Dr. Paul Murray. He is the National Co-Chairman and Executive Director of the Coalition for American Renewal based in Atlanta, Georgia. A former Peace Corps volunteer to Tunisia, Dr. Murray is a published writer and has traveled throughout the world building coalitions through combining service and faith. He is an ordained minister and holds a doctoral degree from Howard University's School of Divinity and a Master's of Divinity and a Master's of Art in Religion from Liberty Baptist Theological Seminary. So I can tell you that Paul is really the best person to moderate this forum because the Coalition for American Renewal, the vision of the coalition is really the subject matter of this forum. So I'm very delighted and pleased that Paul, Reverend Dr. Murray, was able to do this, and let's welcome him as we begin.
Thank you, Gail. Good afternoon, everyone. Turn to your neighbor and say, "Neighbor, I'm glad you're here." We want to make this an interactive forum this afternoon, so I've got a couple of guidelines asking our speakers today to keep to their time so that we can have enough time at the end for you to be able to ask questions and probably help us build up and build forward what we're desiring to do. It's exciting times that we're living in today, but it's also challenging times. When we look at religion, when we look at the disparities that are taking place around the world. In the United States, we have many issues that we are dealing with too. And when you bring people of faith together, there is always a question about where do you stand when it comes from a theological standpoint. And when we talk about studies or applying universal principles and shared values as a framework to really address root conflicts, what we're talking about is how do we segregate or how do we infuse dialogue and action when it comes to working side by side with people of diverse faiths. And there has to come a place where we understand where we come from as individuals and our responsibilities as a person of faith to our own traditions. And we understand that we hold that very true to us. But there's also another realm that we have to look at, is that when we are in the public square, how do we engage in the public square? When we're out in the community, we, people of faith, have a responsibility to serve the people in the communities. And it's not always about pushing a religious viewpoint, but there are principles in every major religion that are synonymous across the board. And when we can agree to those, then there is much that we can do together to address conflict and needs in our communities. So that's a little bit about what this forum is about this afternoon. And so without further ado, I want to bring to this podium our first speaker today, and that is Mr. Malik Sawar, who is the immediate past president of the Malaysian National Human Rights Society. Mr. Malik is a leading Malaysian human rights lawyer and activist, and the immediate past president of the National Human Rights Society. Through HACOM and a coalition of NGOs called Article 11, which was after the constitutional guarantee of freedom of religion, of which HACOM is a member, he has been actively involved in efforts to promote the rule of law and constitutionalism, particularly in the face of worrying trends of Islamization and race politics in government and wider society. He further actively promotes a civil rights discourse both in and outside court. Let's give him a warm welcome as he comes up this afternoon.
Good afternoon, everyone. Well, firstly, thank you for having given me this opportunity to speak to all of you this afternoon. To get right to it, I understand there's going to be a question and answer at the end of this session, Q&A session at the end of this, the presentations you'll hear. So keeping in mind that there's a limitation in time, I'm going to just hit out at a few broad points that I think might give us some material for discussion later on, and approach it that way. All right. So, Rukun Negara in Malaysia. I suppose I'll have to speak about that because I'm the only Malaysian on this panel. All right. Very quickly, for those of you who are not Malaysian, and I see quite a number of you here, we have a written constitution that guarantees the freedom of religion. It also guarantees the freedom of all religions to be practiced in peace and harmony. I'm implying that in. Although the Constitution does recognize that Islam is the religion of the Federation. Now, judicial decisions have clarified that that provision of the Constitution is intended to be invoked only for ceremonial purposes. So we have kings, quite a few of them, and they are notionally the heads of Islam in their respective states, as well as at the federal level. This country is a federation. What's been happening is over the last 25 years or so, there's been an attempt to approach the Constitution in a revisionist manner. So what we're now hearing more and more, and it's been building over the last decade or so, is an assertion that Islam is, as the religion of the Federation, actually places Islam in a superior position, both in terms of informing government policy and the public sphere, administration, governance, but as well as religious entitlements. So this is something that I think is going to be potentially a root source of conflict as we move forward, and it's one of the things I'd like to just hit out at in my presentation. But the thing to remember is, in 1957, when we gained independence, this country was established on the basis that every religion had, every person who professed a particular religion was free to practice and profess that religion as he or she saw fit. And what I would respectfully opine on is this, that over the years, because of the interlinkage between politics and race and in turn religion, Islam has become used for political currency in a way that has become extremely divisive in Malaysia, and as I said, potentially is going to be a source of conflict. Now, when we trace the origins of this posturing or this invoking of religion for political ends, it's not a new thing for us, and I think that's going to be true of any country or any society where religion plays an important part in daily life. The first state in this country to become Islamic was Malacca, and that was sometime in the 1400s. We've had Hindu kingdoms, Buddhist kingdoms going back to 7 AD. But Islam began to be entrenched in this society somewhere in the 1400s. And over the years, by the time 1957 swung around, which is when we gained independence, amongst the Malays, it was the prevalent religion. And so in the negotiations for independence with the British government, the former colonial government of this country, emphasis was placed on the rights of Malays and indirectly, therefore, the rights of Muslims. And for that reason, the constitution was crafted the way it was, but the idea was that it would ultimately be a secular country and so on. All right. Now, in 1969, there were race riots. So in looking back to when it is that we've actually suffered any conflict, that's the only major conflict that I can think of where there's been loss of life and injury. There have been other incidences after, but this is the one that Malaysians recognize the most, 1969. And the government version of why it is that that riot took place was because of a perceived disparity between income levels on the Malays on the one part and the non-Malays on the other part. And because the Malays had a historical place in the evolution of this country, or so some will say, there was a concern that if Malay rights were not given sufficient attention, then there might be further problems. Well, the unofficial version is that the opposition won the elections that round, substantially enough to perhaps challenge incumbent government. But leaving that aside for a minute, measures were then introduced to allow for affirmative action policies to be introduced for the majority Malay, majority Muslim community. So this now allowed for quotas in government, quotas in education, quotas in business, and so on and so forth. Now, obviously, this was a sensitive matter, and there were protests from the non-Malay communities, wondering whether this was going to be used to a particular end. And in an attempt to try and balance out the situation, the Rukun Negara was introduced. Now, this was a set of guiding principles which essentially stated what I consider to be the obvious, respecting the fact of a democratic form of government, respecting the rule of law, respecting every Malaysian's right to have a place in the society, respecting the right of all of us to have equal opportunities to resources and so on and so forth. And that's what the principles largely say. The preamble to the Rukun Negara is quite interesting. So what I'll do is I'll just very briefly tell you what the preamble says. And this is a loose translation because it's in Malay. It says, in order to achieve a greater unity of all the people, in order to maintain a democratic way of life, in order to create a just society in which the nation shall be equitably shared, ensuring a liberal approach to the rich and diverse cultural traditions of Malaysia, and building a progressive society which shall be oriented to modern science and technology. When we look at that preamble, the essence of it is essentially this, that all of us are equal, all of us are entitled to have a dignified existence in this society without impediment of any form. And that was the blueprint that we were told in 1969 was going to be the guiding force in the way in which this government ran the country, or any other government for that matter. All right. Okay. Things haven't gone quite as smoothly as one might have hoped. And for those of you who've been following events in Malaysia, some extremely disturbing events have been taking place progressively over the last, as I say, 25 years or so. I think one of the incidents that to me illustrates the way in which things may have gone awry is the recent decision of the Court of Appeal in this country prohibiting the use of the word Allah by any person other than I'm sorry, let me state that a little bit more accurately. The court decision actually says that the Catholic Church is not allowed to use the word Allah in the Malay publication of its newsletter, a Malay version or translation of its newsletter. It can use the word God, but it can't use the word Allah, right? And the reasoning underlying all of this is one of concerns about whether or not the use of Allah by the Catholic Church will result in public disorder. So the government in its wisdom says it will. The Court of Appeal in its wisdom went on to hold that the word Allah is not integral to the Christian faith, and went about trying to dissect what was essential or not for the faith in a way which I think was quite bizarre. And that's where we are now. Now, the political spin on all of this is that the word Allah cannot be used by non-Malays at all. And that was the context to the Court of Appeal decision, and it became hugely controversial. It still is. It's a source of great embarrassment for this country, but in as much as it's embarrassing, it also points to the fact of an inability to recognize certain fundamentals in this society, which I think is worrying. Because in my view, when we look at conflicts in whatever form they may take, ultimately they go back to impressions on the part of one of the conflicting parties that social justice is not at the level that is reasonable or fair. And if we go into fundamentalism, militancy, whatever it is, ultimately it comes back to that root cause of a perception that there is social injustice which can no longer be addressed through dialogue or intercultural or interracial or interfaith mechanisms that then warrants action. So in various countries around the world, and I've spoken at other venues internationally, and in one particular venue I was asked to comment on the prophet cartoons in the Danish newspapers and how that was an encroachment on Islamic rights, as it were, and that's the backdrop to an international move to try and promote this idea of a ban against insulting religions at the UN level. So we'll leave that aside for a minute. But when we explored this, and we had individuals from all sorts of areas, from Christian backgrounds to Islamic backgrounds, and there was a lot of upheaval at the earlier parts of that workshop, as one can imagine. But ultimately, when we talked about it, it became fundamentally one about social injustice. So when you have the mass demonstrations, effigy burning, ultimately what's being expressed is a complete rejection of a quality of life that's being imposed on a particular community. And ultimately, I think if we approach it that way, then this is my final point, we must ultimately come back to a form of administration or government in which the government plays a neutral role as an honest broker. And from the Islamic standpoint, many learned authors have written that even for the diversity of the Islamic faith, we need a secular context at the administrative level. On a purely personal level, it's completely different. I mean, that's for the individual. But in order to give the space needed for persons to feel comforted that they will be allowed to live a life of dignity in a manner which ensures that their expectations and aspirations as citizens of any particular society can be fulfilled, no one is looking for a free ride, then you need to give them the space that will allow that. So that's important. And I think if there's going to be any efforts to try and promote interfaith dialogue, then it has to start from that fundamental point. We have to all accept that every one of us is entitled to this, and that's then the starting point of any discussion. I'll just end by saying, and maybe this is something we can take up, one of the things that I have been involved in that's not on that CV was an effort by a group of NGOs, about 60 NGOs, to establish an interfaith commission in this country, because it was thought necessary in view of the way in which politics and various other factors were encroaching into religious harmony. We thought we needed an independent mechanism by which government could be assisted. Not adjudicative, but fact-finding, consultative, and we actually drafted a model law for that, which I can make available to the organizers as a step forward. But tellingly, that effort became hugely controversial, and it was then labeled as being anti-Islamic and anti-democratic and so on. So that's something that I think we can take up in the Q&A, and I'll leave it at that. Thank you very much.
Wouldn't it be nice if just coming together was easy? It would really be nice. Even in our own families, we have struggles and we have conflict. But I appreciate a lot with what has just been discussed today by Mr. Malik. Very important to understand the freedom of religion. And that, as he mentioned, that entitlement is critical. So let me now move on to our next speaker this afternoon, and that is Dr. Imam Muhammad Ashafar. He is the co-director of the Muslim Christian Interfaith Meditation Center in Kaduna, leading task force to resolve conflicts across Nigeria. An Ashoka Fellow in 2006, Shafar was conferred with an honorary doctorate degree in alternative medicine in India in 2005 from the University of Glasgow, and in 2010 and from the University of Massachusetts in 2012. He is the chief imam of the Mosque Foundation, the Goodwill Ambassador of the Golden Rule on the African continent, as awarded by the United Religions Initiative and the African Union. He is also set to be honored as Africa Man of the Year. Wow, we need to congratulate him on that, isn't that? along with Pastor James Wu, for 2013 by the Africa-German Foundation, or Germany Foundation. Let's give him a warm welcome and congratulations this afternoon.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Wassalatu wassalam ala ashraf al-mursaleen. Distinguished brothers and sisters, I greet you with the greeting of peace by saying once more, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Meaning, may peace and blessing of Almighty be with you all. Here is an opportunity to share with you what models have we been using. How do we come into putting into practical terms the concept of our shared values within the human family, shared values within Abrahamic traditions? How does we make it work? How do we use it in our own context? As a Muslims, looking at Nigeria, and of course the African continent, which is acknowledged, my city, Nigeria, is acknowledged to be the most religious nation in the world. Of course, most religious, but of course not most godly. And being one of the most, and Africa is also adjudged as the most notoriously religious continent. Anything can sell in the name of religion on the continent of Africa. Their passion for faith, passion for spirituality. How are we able to build this partnership? Not only in Nigeria, but across the continent of Africa, and sharing those values around the world. Our shared values were moved, for me, is motivated by the Quranic scriptural text. First is the Quran chapter 4, verse 1. Quran chapter 4, verse 1. Second, Quran chapter 49, verse 13. Quran 49, 13. And thirdly, Quran chapter 3, verse 64. 364. This scriptural text are the strong motivating factor when you look at shared values that create a bond between the Muslim community and the others who live next to them, irrespective of their belief, their race, their culture, or their worldview. How do you relate with them? These are inclusive scriptural texts that talk of inclusive shared values across the human family. It bounds that the destiny of a Muslims is attached with the destiny of the other. These are scriptural texts specifically, because there's no time to go into that. You can just go into those texts and you can find what I'm really talking about. Then there is the hadith, which is the outstanding famous hadith that says, La yu'minu ahdukum hatta yuhibbu lahakihi ma yuhibbu nafsi. Meaning not one of you truly believe. You cannot truly be of faith until and unless you love for your brother what you love for yourselves. In other hadith saying, love for humankind what you like for your own selves. These are the bonding spirit that talk about a bigger framework by which as a Muslims, either you are religious or irreligious in terms of spirituality, you are bound by this as a motivating factor to look at the other from a positive perspectives. And as African Muslims, we are also bound by our own spirituality from the African traditional cultural backgrounds. But in some culture, religion and culture are so blend that you cannot draw a line. And the spirit of Ubuntu has kept the African man going seriously. The Ubuntu concept of you are what you are because of who I am. You are what you are because of who I am. Therefore, I am because you are. And if you want to deny this African proverb, let's put you on solitary confinement and see how does your life improve or deproved. How do you add value or devalue your own life and your own worldview? Distinguished brothers and sisters, and this informs us about civilizations and the value of our civilization that we have. I always love the German philosopher who says that civilization are measured by the level of diversity retained. Civilization is measured by the level of diversity retained and unity attained. Diversity retained and unity attained. This measure an ideal civilization or unideal civilizations. Distinguished brothers and sisters, based on these shared values, we have our challenges in Nigeria as Muslim and Christian working together, living together once upon a time, very happy family, until the economic recession in the late 70s. And we start finding our challenges in the early 80s. And to date, we've been trying to find the bearing in our Nigerian communities. And that gave birth to springing up of many faith-based organizations and institutions trying to create a paradigm that will take us back to those glory days when the Muslims and the Christians live as a very, very good neighbors. When the fear is not about you as a Christian or as a Muslim, but the fear is beyond, is what affects our honor together. Distinguished brothers and sisters, as a child of circumstance, we've been part of those fear, living on fear, working on fear of the others, that make us to go into extreme level, withdraw from the others, and even take off arms at one point in time in order to defend our community. But distinguished brothers and sisters, along that line, we have our turning point, which the Imam and the Pastor documentary, or the BBC World documentary, turning the World Review Beyond 2000, among others, will tell you, just Google BBC World Review Beyond 2000. We'll give you a summary of documentary of the end of the year 2000, what outstanding or remarkable effort we've done in trying to create a shift to a shared value from exclusive to an inclusive worldview. Distinguished brothers and sisters, if we are to look deep into, we gave birth to an organization called the Interfaith Mediation Center. And then from May 1995 to date, as a faith-based organizations, what role have we been played, or have we been able to play as a partnerships? And when we started, it was a lonely journey. It was very hard, very difficult. People feel you cannot put that, because people are still on the pains. In my own city of Kaduna, from 87 crisis to 1990, 1991, 1992, unfortunate Zangon Kataf crisis that really break the backbones and create that division within the city of Kaduna. And then until the unfortunate 2000 and 2001, 2002, both the Sharia crisis, unquote, and the Miss World beauty pageant that also put us apart in creating a divided city, of a city with about 2.3 million people today, divided into two. However, with those challenges, we walked the path, and we are able to create 21 different modules. In the last 19 years, we have created 21 different modules of engagement on interfaith partnerships, working across divided lines, either as a youth or as a women groups, working within formal educational system or informal educational system like the madrasa. What are the modules that you can engage as a peacemaker? What are the modules as a religious personality you can bring on board to create a template by which, not about talk show. I'm very happy when Jin Shun say, no more the years of talk show, is the era of action. So we have different 21 modules that we have engaged in practical dimension within a complex nation called Nigeria, 170 million, 250 ethnic nationalities, Muslims and Christians almost 50-50, the last election 52, and then 40 Christian, 7.8% others in the last census that was agreed. And if you look at that phenomenon to date, you will see that it's a complex nation, the most populous nation in the black continent. We have walked through these important modules, about 21 of them, and come out with 3 outstanding successful interventions that I would like to share with you. One important intervention that religion can play a very important role where political system have a stalemate or where political system has failed was our intervention in Yelwan Shandam. Yelwan Shandam is a city in Plateau State, which up to today, most of you know Plateau State is still not settled as a result of this conflict, political conflict, but taking on religious dimension. Fighting over resources, taking religious identity. This conflict in Yelwan Shandam, we are able to go into intervention after the state of emergency was declared and the military took over the state. They are looking for solutions. And there, we are invited by the state government. The administrator, Chris Ali, come in and help us, what do we do? And he gave us the Southern Senatorial Zone, and specifically the city where genocide was committed, the city of Yelwa Shandam, in the Southern Senatorial Zone. We move into actions. And moving into action, we're able to reconcile these two communities in 2005. And since after the Yellow and Shandam declaration that come out of that discussions, up to this moment, cities around towns and villages are on fire, but not the city of Yellow and Shandam. This shows the impact of a religiously motivated religious leaders if they move outside the pulpit, outside the box, into the social engagement, they can be able to create a new paradigm that will really bring the sustainable peace that Almighty define or desire for all his creations. Distinguished brothers and sisters, number 2, we look at what we call track 2 diplomacy. And we look at interfaith engagement in track 2 diplomacy. And in track 2 diplomacy, we move from Nigeria into Kenya. After the post-election violence in Kenya, we work in the Rift Valley. And we are, as member of Ashoka Fellows in Kenya, we are looking for who are the ideal people around the world who can help us to resolve the problem. Even though the problem is not religious, it's ethnic based in Kenya, the Rift Valley, but how can we have people who can neutral, who can come in? And the idea of getting the imam and the pastor to come to play. And we move into Kenya. And getting into Kenya, we are able to work in partnership with civil society organizations and to look into the Kikiyus and the Kalenjins. And we work the work for complete 4 good months, going, coming in Yellow Shandam. And at the end of in the Rift Valley, in fact, in the Bond Forest specifically. And after our negotiations, the Kikiyu and the Kalenjins, who have murdered they are same Christians, burning down churches, killing inside the church, one tribe killing the other, reminiscent of what happened in Rwanda. But we're able to work with them. And today, they're able to reconcile. That is the constituency where Uhuru Kenyatta come from. It's the same constituency where Ruto William come from. And because of our interventions, the community forgive and let go of their pains. Among other interventions by other civil society. And today, Uhuru Kenyatta and Ruto, who was the militia on the other side, unquote, they came in, the community forgive them, they contest election and they won. Even though they have case before ICCJ, the International Criminal Court of Justice, but in their own country, they are forgiven and they contest and they won the election. This is the power of faith-based motivated initiatives. When they see me as an imam, if it is a predominantly Christian setting, they don't see the Muslims. They see a brother coming to give a helping hand. And the outcome is what we call an African answer, which is a powerful documentary that is translated into about 13 different international languages being used around the world. The same applies to the imam and the pastor, from vengeance to forgiveness. Finally, empowering civil society organization, we move to Chad. Chad here in the Chadian, where the Arabs and the Francophone are divided communities. We work within these divided communities, and we have what we call the Chadian solution. It's a documentary that supersedes how faith people can go into action. It has happened around the world. We need to bring it back. Mozambique does not get her independence until the Saint Egidio Catholic community come in to intervene, and the outcome of their intervention was successful independence of Mozambique. We know even with the American Reverend Jesse Jackson and Louis Farrakhan, they are the one who intervened where diplomacy has failed to bring about the release of the hostages in Cambodia. So this shows that there are many things religious people can do as a partnership for peace to bring about a sustainable world where we shall all be proud of who you are, and our values will not be, religion will become a force for peace. Part of the solution of our global human family challenges, not part of the problem, which it seems to have been today. But we know religion is not the problem. It is the actors who are the problems. And in conclusion, I want to say, you cannot call a car a bad one simply because you got a drunken driver who burned the car to the wall. Religion has no problem. It is the drivers who have a problem. And we need to work together in order to let them back.
Is that a good analogy or what? Religion is not the problem, it's the drivers. Just a point, we are live streaming this, and we're glad that we're able to do that. If you would like to take pictures, please do not come up and down this aisle, because you stand right in front of the camera. So if you want to take pictures, please come on the other side of the aisle and come up. So just want to make that point. Let me go ahead and just move quickly into our third speaker this afternoon, and that is Father Varghese. Father Varghese is the founder of the Universal Solidarity Movement of Value Education for Peace. The Universal Solidarity Movement is an NGO centered on developing enlightened leadership, responsible citizenship, and promoting harmony among religions and ethnic groups. Father Varghese was the youth director of the Madhya Pradesh Regional Bishops' Conference. It was his work with youth that led him to build the USM and promote a culture of interreligious harmony and cooperation in India and abroad. Let's give him a warm welcome as Father comes this afternoon.
Dear moderator, my fellow panelists, and my dear brothers and sisters. I was born and brought up in a very strong Catholic background in the south of India. And because of this strong Catholic background, I chose to be a priest and came to North India as a missionary. And doing the traditional missionary work almost 10 years. Then came a dramatic, experience. Though India could be proud of having a pluralistic religious background, we have witnessed quite a lot of conflicts between religious groups, caste conflicts, and that made me to start reflecting about my own missionary life, my own priestly life, and the entire religious practices in India, about which we boast very much. Why do people fight in the name of religion? Why God has to become a commodity for sale? And I started wondering whether Karl Marx was right when he said religion has become an opium of the people. Sometimes we feel people are drugged with religion. And though I was a priest, I started reflecting on it because of my exposure to various groups, multi-religious, multilingual groups in my country. And after a long reflection, after a long prayer, I came to a realization. The root cause of all these conflicts, religious conflicts or caste conflicts, tribal, non-tribal, linguistic conflicts that we have, I believe very strongly, and I still becoming stronger in my belief, it's because we have failed to distinguish religiosity and spirituality. That is the root cause I find. Religiosity has to do with rituals, rules, regulations. Spirituality has to do with values. Values of peace, love, justice. Religiosity promotes beliefs. Beliefs are different. That differentiates us. Hindu belief, Christian belief, Muslim beliefs. We are led by beliefs. Whereas spirituality will help us to look for truth. Scientific temperament. Not superstitions. Scientific temperament. And it is said, more people have died for their beliefs than for truth. More people have died for the beliefs than for truth. People are ready to die. People are ready to kill, to protect, preserve the beliefs. But very few people you will see people who die for truth. But there are. And religiosity divides people because it is based on rituals, it is based on externals. It divides. Whereas spirituality, which is, based on values, that unites people. Unites in love, unites in justice, unites in honor, respect, dignity. That is what the spirituality does. And in fact, all the religions began promoting spirituality. It's a way of life. It's a movement, spiritual movements. later on hijacked by the so-called clergy, dogmatic people perhaps. And here comes very strongly, religiosity has to do with the uniformity, whereas spirituality promotes pluralism, diversity. God has no one name, one color, one face, one shape. God is pluralistic. Whether you are black, white, tall, fat, short, whether you speak English, whether you speak any language. God has no language, God has no shape, God has no face. And why are we fighting for a particular name, face? That's religiosity. Uniformity is promoted by religions. Beliefs are promoted by religiosity, whereas spirituality promotes values, and there is pluralism, there is scientific temperament, there is unity. And there comes a very important point, this pluralistic spirituality. And I myself looked into my own scriptures, and where Jesus Christ speaks such a sublime manner, you will worship God in truth and spirit. When the Jewish woman Samaritan woman spoke to, you Jews worship God in Jerusalem, we worship God in this mountain. And Jesus said, woman, the days are coming, you will worship God neither in Jerusalem nor in that mountain. That means our spirituality should go beyond churches, beyond temples, beyond mosques, beyond all worship centers, and all sorts of forms and names. And that is a very, very important thing. Pluralistic spirituality. When I came here and I saw the theme of this conference, unity in diversity, in fact, one of the strongest points of India is unity in diversity. Perhaps I wonder whether there is any country which has got so much of diversity as still unity. 24 official languages. I don't know, maybe 25, 26, I'm not sure. Can't even count. Official languages. Over 2,000 dialects. And you have all sort of people, Aryans, Mongolians, Dravidians, different classical dances, different classical music, folk dances, different food, different climatic conditions. Pluralism is inherited by Indians. It's a national heritage. But unfortunately, to be very frank, this pluralism, which is supposed to be a very, very sacred heritage of our country, is threatened by fundamentalist forces, people who want to have that uniform culture, uniform religion, one culture, one nation. And that is the time I felt, how can we preserve this national heritage? And I had an experience of working with the young people. So I said, why don't we go to the young people? It's a time for the youth. So, with this spirituality behind, why don't we get the youth to preserve the spirituality? How can we liberate our young people from being, misused by various forces, negative forces? And therefore, 20 years ago, when our country witnessed a terrible religious conflict, hundreds of people died just because of religious conflicts. I said, can't we do something positive? 1993, we started this movement called Universal Solidarity Movement of Value Education for Peace. It was a proactive response to religious conflicts, caste conflicts, everything that divides our society. And what was the basic two fundamental principles on which we work? One, you cannot change the world by preaching sermons. Our great Mahatma Gandhi had said, you be the change. Based on that, we have a slogan. Self-transformation is the way to transform the world. And we give a module to young people, all those schools where we go. We have a module of personal transformation module. 5 simple things which every religion people can practice, every nationality can practice. 1, pray daily for peace according to your own tradition. Hindu, Christian, Muslim, pray for peace. Do a good deed without selfishness, for the good of the society. Honor your parents, teachers, and all human beings, because every human being is created in the image and likeness of God. So honor everybody, irrespective of his color, caste, creed. 4th, skip a meal once a week and contribute the savings to the poor and the hungry. And the last one, respect earth and save its resources. In Indian tradition, earth is considered as goddess, our mother, and respect the earth and its save resources, environmental. 5 practices. And practicing these 5 paths is mandatory to be a member of our movement. Children, teachers, parents, all those who practice automatically become member. And the moment you stop practicing, you get dismissed automatically. That is a revolution, a spiritual movement. And I must tell you, over 800 schools over the last 20 years, we have reached out with this message. Over 1 million students and their teachers are part of it, and also a large number of parents. This is what we do, creating a civilization of love. Second pillar of the movement is a pluralistic spirituality, the vision. Pluralism is the heritage we have received from India, national heritage, a heritage we have received from God. Therefore, the vision, the dream has to be based on that. So we give a vision for a country, we give a vision for the society, creating a civilization of love based on this vision. What is the vision? We dream of a country and the world with the universal family spirit of the Hinduism, discipline and fellowship of the Islam, courage of the Sikh religion, compassion of Buddhism, non-violence of Jainism, is another religion born in our India, creativity of Parsis, or Saurashtrians, highly creative people, indomitability of the Jewish people who face the maximum persecution, but the indomitable spirit, the willpower, and tribals. Our country has got over 20% indigenous people. So we say the tribal, cosmic solidarity of the tribals. And then self-sacrifice and forgiveness of Christianity. This is the vision we present, the values, spirituality. With that kind of a spiritual value education, spiritual movement, we wish that we can have a civilization of love. That is the way we can solve all the conflicts that we have. Finally, it's not just in theory, it's not in talking. We insist of living every value that we preach. So every member who goes to the schools to talk to a group, we make sure whether they believe in what they speak. And the national office that we have is a model community. If you come there, you will see people of different religious background, people of different faith live as members, fully participating, eating the same meal and praying together, living under the one roof. And it is to that center, hundreds of young students come from all parts of the country for a residential training. The whole training is based on how to create a civilization of love based on these spiritual values, this spiritual vision. So the pluralism is not just spoken, it is practiced, both in its content and organization. Our national executive members belong to 4 different religion members there should be. when election is taking place. Empowerment of women is a program, but we make sure in the national executive we have at least 3 women out of 7 members. So over 40% women. So all these things what you preach should be practiced. And therefore a civilization of love is possible based on the pluralistic spirituality. And spirituality is the basis of all our solutions. Thank you very much. God bless you.
Thank you very much, and I really want to give you all time to be able to ask these great panelists questions, so please forgive us pushing you to complete, but we want them to be able to ask you questions. Our final speaker, and the most beautiful on the panel, is Dr. Estrella Babano. I have met her personally in the Philippines, and she does a great work and really loves children and loves people, so it's an honor to have her on this panel today. She's the former regional director of the Department of Education in the Philippines, a regional administrator and a professional leader. She was a superb architect and advancer of the Mindanao Peace Initiative based on her vision of empowering all people through public education and training that would be most successful under peaceful conditions, and also incorporating an intergroup trust and cooperation. She's a former regional director of the Department of Education for Northern and Central Mindanao, and also the former education attaché of the Philippine Embassy in Riyadh for Philippine schools overseas in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and the Middle East. Now she serves as the chairwoman of the Mindanao Peace Initiative. Let's give our this beautiful young lady a good warm hand of applause as she comes.
Thank you very much, Dr. Murray. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wal barakatuh. Greetings of peace to one and all, and a pleasant afternoon. The paper I'm going to present to you is a snapshot, because of the time constraint, of what we are doing in Mindanao, hopefully, to address the conflict we are facing right now. Okay, so it's addressing the roots of conflict, the Mindanao experience. Next. It's an introduction. Oh. The Mindanao that we know today is a land of mixed faith, cultures, and beliefs. Cultural diversity defines and influences the relationships among the tribe peoples. It's one reality that we Mindanaoans face, along with some advantages and disadvantages that come with it. Cultural differences tend to make it more complicated and difficult for 3 groups of people to know and relate with each other. The 3 groups actually are the Muslims, the Christian migrants, and the indigenous peoples. To know and relate with each other or live together in a community, you have a situation that tends to lend itself to misunderstanding, mistrust, and mutual suspicion, chauvinism, and animosity. But the tribe people share the same fundamental belief in justice, democracy, and self-determination. And therefore, peace initiatives aims to foster the values and attitudes conducive to living harmoniously and peacefully amid cultural diversity. It seeks to achieve state of oneness among the tribe peoples. Thus, it works to promote tolerance, goodwill, and respect. Okay, our initiative is anchored on the 4 guideposts of peace. We have harmony with God. We know that the reason why we have conflict starts with self, you know. If you don't have harmony with God, which means you keep on violating the commandments of God, then you don't have peace of mind. Likewise, in self, if your conscience tells you so and you do the other thing, I believe you don't have peace of mind. And then harmony with others, and then also with the environment. We know that we're just borrowing this earth from the future generation. Therefore, it is our responsibility to take care of it. Otherwise, the future generation will curse us even in our graveyard. Okay, as an educator, I focus on education. I believe that the heart of education is the education of the heart. That education to be effective should be transformational education. We know very well that what is happening on earth now is because of people who has been so engrossed on material competencies, performance, earning a degrees, and has left behind their head the ultimate goal why we are here on earth, that the ultimate goal of life is in preparation for our union with our Creator in the hereafter, that everything on earth is temporary. So, the heart of education is the education. Formation of values is the foremost concern of education. That peace is a process. It is dynamic and holistic. We cannot just put it in paper and forget about it. I have known of a lot of peace pact, peace agreement that has been signed. Historical signing has been happening. But if people do not change their mindset, then nothing will happen on that paper which has been agreed. So we cannot, it must be nurtured and taught to the pupils and teachers as well. We have to take care of, if we want peace, we make peace, we build peace, we keep peace. Education is the permanent solution to our situation. I believe that there's not much we can do with the adults now. Their minds are fixed. So let's start with the kids, developing them at a very early age. The impact may not be immediate, but we can be very sure that we're coming up with a new generation of people that would not want to have war or want to have violence. What are our peace education initiatives? We have established School of Peace. In the School of Peace, we have integration of peace concepts. In instructional materials, we have changed our instructional materials. Then we also undergo training of school heads. We create or organize Peace Education Council, involving the parents, the community, the church, the media, and everybody who has a stake in the development of a child is a member of the Peace Education Council, because we believe that to develop the child fully, spiritually, physically, mentally, the school cannot do that task. It needs a village to educate a child. So we need everyone's effort, concerted effort. Okay, we have also to structure our schools if we want them to be a school of peace. We establish learning hubs. In the Philippines, we have big enrollments. We have about 55, 65, 70, and therefore not all the children can be attended to. So we provide learning hubs for every subject area where the child who wants to have an enhancement lesson should go. And once the teacher will see there's English, math, character education, technology, they just go there, and then the teacher will go and provide them enhancement teaching. We have peace parks in the school. The peace park is considered a zone of peace. Pupils and children who are fighting, they would run to the peace park. Once you are inside the peace park, you cannot be fought by anybody. You're safe. So also, a child who has done something wrong will just go to the peace park instead of going straight to the classroom, afraid of being scolded by the teacher. So he will go to the peace park, sit there, and then wait for the teacher or the principal to talk to her and then guide and then bring her to the classroom. Then we have peace gardens. This is a school community endeavor, please. Okay, we also have strengthening alive and madrasa education. In the Philippines, the Muslims are minorities. Our education is basically anchored on Christian dogma. And therefore, to make this education responsive and relevant, we have to integrate Arabic language and Islamic values education to make the education responsive and relevant to our Muslim children. We have a support of activities. This is anchored on the principle of learning to learn, learning to do, learning to be, learning to live together. An education cannot be effective if it's only inside the classroom. There has to be a support activity outside of the classroom to put what they have learned into practice. Okay, we have this Kids Say No to Guns, Converting Arms to Farms from Instruments of Death to Nurturing of Life. We are campaigning with our parents not to buy toy guns to their children, boy kids. I know that parents, fathers especially, once they have a son, the first toy that they buy is a toy gun. And we say, no, no. We let them surrender the toy guns in exchange of seedlings and let them plant the seedlings. So, from instruments of death to nurturing of life, converting arms to farms. We also attend to the education of our indigenous peoples. Our indigenous peoples are the indigenous inhabitants of the land, and they strongly believe that our education is letting them forget what is their heritage as a people. So therefore, we have to enrich our please. Okay, these are support activities. We also have community immersion. We allow children to homestay in, Christian children to homestay in Muslim family and vice versa. We conduct peace congress and symposium. We have twinning programs with institution in Manila. Like a Catholic institution, Miriam College has a twinning program with some of our schools, and we exchange students. Then we have cultural exchange. This is the only way to erase the biases and prejudices that they have. And also, seemingly, break the invisible barrier that lies in the minds of people about biases. We have the Peace Festival. Okay, next. We have Interfaith Forum, where we invite an imam, a pastor, a priest to talk to our children and parents. Next. What are the implications? Promotion of culture of peace, respect and tolerance in multicultural diversity, healthy coexistence regardless of cultural differences, religious beliefs, and multiracial ethnicity, sustainable development, and establish strong partnership between government, civil society, faith-based organization. Okay. Finally, it is only by investing in the creation of a new culture of peace in the present generation that lasting universal peace would be achieved. Thank you very much. Thank you, and wassalamu alaikum.
It's working 1, 2. Excellent. Thank you very much. Did she fly through that or what? And you know what? You still had a minute left. Well, we really appreciate that. That gives us at least 15 minutes, or right around 15 minutes, to now open the floor for questions. You've heard each of our eloquent speakers this afternoon present from different perspectives. But what we need to do is take a look at where are we today and how do we move forward, because when we talk about interfaith dialogue and coming together, we always are like a dog chasing the tail. There is never any real solution. But having meetings and forums like this allows us the opportunity to hear about some great things. You know, before she came up to speak, Dr. Babano said, I'm not a preacher, I'm not a minister, I'm not an imam. She says, and you have me on this panel. But why she's on this panel is because she takes faith and moves it into action. The Peace Village that she has is a powerful statement of engaging young people and connecting with them. So I want to go ahead and open the floor. If you have a question, would you just raise your hand right now and would like to, okay, could you stand up and identify yourself, who you are, where you're from, and then who you'd like to direct the question to. And questions only, please, no commentaries. Yeah, it's on. No, we need it.
I have utmost respect for the liberal and Catholic attitude that the panelists have shown. I'm not sounding to be skeptical, but I think we come across liberal and spiritual discourses in such interfaith conferences. I'm afraid we do not have the courage to talk all these things in our places of religious worship. There we talk more of exclusivism and try to keep our communities separate away from other communities. That's my first contention. And that means our religious priests are afraid of their own people. They do not show that kind of courage and capacity of interfaith spirituality that we display in our interfaith conferences. My second contention is that the disputes in a country are not created by the people as such. They are not created on the basis of religion. They are created by political factors, by economic factors, by motivated people on all sides. Maybe that, so I'm sorry to say, they do hobnobbing behind the curtain. I mean, the priestly class wish to come closer to the politicians. Politicians wish to come closer to the priestly class as such. I mean, a lot of confusion is created on account of that. It's not religion that is to blame. It is not God that is to blame. Thank you.
Do you have a question? You don't have a question. Okay. Who has a question? Okay. Would you please stand?
My name is Sangat Singh. I come from the Interfaith group and also from the Rukun Tetangga. My question is to Imtiaz and later to the others. First question is, you have just highlighted that Islam is the preferred language here. But recently in the recent UMNO assembly, there is a move to make only Sunnism as the religion of Islam here. Of course, we know there are other Muslims in this country. How does the constitution interpret whether it's a Sufi Muslim or Shia Muslim or Sunni Muslim or some other Muslim? How does the constitution apply to that? That's to him. And to further there from there, you quoted the different aspects of religion, their value system. You quoted the Sikh religion as being courageous. I think it's also caring and forgiving. It's very close. And just for the information of the church and the other members, recent research shows not only Guru Nanak went to Mecca and Medina, he was the first interfaith religious man who not only traveled to every center, every religion, and non-believers in India, China, Buddhism, and all the religions that were there. You mentioned it is God's, India is God's place. Wherever any religion is thrown out, they find home in India. We need India. We hope every country becomes like India. But my point here is, I was always wondering, my scriptures and others mention as far as, and Guru Nanak, the Muslims say he must be a Muslim, he reached Mecca. The Hindus say he's our guru and things like that. But only one part in the script we have mentioned about Christ. Recent search, Guru Nanak met up with the 11th Pope. And he had dialogue, the scripture Ikumkar is there in the Florence place. And he advocated, besides a lot of things like equality for women and all that, especially slavery, and of course the love and all that. He was instrumental in advising and moving the Pope to advise all the Europeans to go against slavery of all sorts. Just for the information. This is a fact. Thank you very much.
It's a very specific question, but the Malaysian, well, the constitution actually doesn't make a distinction between Shia or Sunni Muslims in the practice of faith here. However, administration of religion is vested in the state governments, and they have their religious committees. And the way in which the judiciary has looked at this question is to defer ultimately to the wisdom of the particular state committees that oversee these things. And at the state level, there are fatwas in various parts of Malaysia that, for example, classify Shia Islam as a deviationist form of Islam. And there are other forms of deviationist Islam as well. I think there's something like 37 or 38 different deviant groups that have been declared as such by the state committees. This is at the national level. How this operates in the way in which Malaysia deals with the rest of the world is somewhat of a mystery to me, because we are members of the OIC and Iran is a member of that collective, as are other countries in which Shia Islam is freely practiced. So that's where it's at on that. I think that's the best I can say. Thanks.
Father Verghese, did you want to make any commentary in response?
Based on the pluralistic spirituality, when we want to educate our younger generation on this whole thing, we try to make all those values predominant values of all religions. It's not only one religion, one value. Every religion has got all these values. But predominant values of different religions we try to promote, and during the sessions we are able to talk about them, about the religion. It's only a short period, but we do talk about it. And one of the predominant qualities we took from the Sikh religion is the courage of the Sikh people. But of course, compassion, love, forgiveness, everything is there in every religion. Hindus, Muslims, everybody has. But what we try to have is the predominant religion, predominant values of all religion, because people in India understand only one language, language of religion. And you cannot talk on Western secularism there. You have to talk to them, and we have to make them feel, look, this is ours. So we want to give maximum knowledge and understanding to every young people about all religions, and particularly their values. Of course, I know there are many other values. I'm sorry. Thank you very much.
Okay, excellent, thank you. You could stand up, give your name. Stand up.
Hi, my name is Arlene. I have a question to Mr. Malik Imtiaz regarding on Rukun Negara. Lately, there's been some sort of like a revisit among the younger generation on the importance of Rukun Negara. I was just wondering, since 1970s until now, how effective has Rukun Negara been in terms of unity, national unity? And secondly, do we really need to revisit Rukun Negara, or do we need to perhaps have a much more better national core value for Malaysia?
There you go, that's a heavy question. You have the mic? From a young lady too, wow.
I'm going to try and answer this on a slightly broader plane so that it's equally relevant to everyone. What I said just now about what our Rukun Negara is, I mean, I gave you a summary of it. It's actually, I think, captures the essence of everything that's been said on the panel today, and points to a universal notion of dignity, equality, and so on. So we'll leave it at that plane for a minute. So if I'm asked, do I need to revamp this set of principles? Obviously not, because these are universal principles. But it takes me to this point that ultimately where there is conflict, or where there is a climate in which tensions are allowed to mount, it usually comes back to a few basic notions. And I think when you look at these notions, it goes back to one point, which is ultimately someone or the other is controlling definitions, controlling the way in which truth is portrayed. So being specific, let's look at the Malaysian example. You don't have a free press. And so the truth as portrayed by the media is what is permitted to be represented. And then you have links between media and government. And so media becomes a mouthpiece or an organ for governmental policy. Now, governmental policy is obviously ultimately shaped by politics. So what we've tried to do, and this takes me to this suggestion, this idea we had about the Interfaith Commission initiative, which became hugely controversial. It was misrepresented as being an attempt to try and introduce adjudicative mechanisms that would counter the Sharia courts, or would undermine the powers of the Islamic committees in the various states and so on, when it was nothing like that at all. What we realized was, if someone were to say, all right, there is this community that's looking to undermine Islamic practice, all right, who determines the truth of that assertion? Especially in a system where democracy has to some extent been undermined and the institutions of the state perhaps have been eroded and are not functioning as they should be. And so there's a huge deficit of trust in these institutions. And I think this is a problem that is not unique to us. It's also other parts of the world. But so what we suggested was, all right, why can't we have some form of independent mechanism that ultimately can be a repository of trust and confidence for wider community? And what was interesting was, although it was an interfaith initiative, 60 NGOs, including the church groups, some non-mainstream Muslim groups, the Buddhists and Christians and so on, ultimately when we decided who it is that would become these commissioners on this interfaith initiative, everyone agreed that they wouldn't be religious personalities. They wouldn't be representatives of particular faith groups. They would instead be persons who were recognized as being outstanding human beings, individuals who appreciated constitutionalism, who appreciated these values, of universal values and so on. So I think ultimately when we go back to what it is that the younger generation needs, well, they need the space to understand that these values should and can be embraced. They shouldn't be pushed into corners where they have to make choices. And I think this is what our colleague from the Philippines was trying to impress, that ultimately they need to be given the freedom to think themselves about what it is that's important for them or not. And ultimately it comes back to what these core values are, whatever the mechanism is. And I agree also that we need to find some way in which we can have neutral space in which there's dialogue. But we can't have that if we're going to leave it in the hands of the politicians or the stakeholders in power and so on. So
Excellent point. Thank you very much. I think all of you have brought about a very valid point. Are we religion or are we human beings? Because if we are human beings that have a religious tradition in our lives, we should come forward as that individual first and not the religion. When we do that, and this is what we're seeing in the United States of America, when we do that, then we all can work together. It's like, hi, I'm Paul Murray, and by the way, I may be a Pentecostal preacher, but that's not the big issue or the point that we want. I want to work together with you because my cities are crumbling, immorality is running rampant, there's poverty going bad all across the country. How do I address these crises? And how do I work with people so that we can do it together? So when we look at those issues first, that's how we can move and grow forward. The Imam said, are we the car or who do we blame? The religion or the drivers? It's the drivers. And when we look at Dr. Babano, the work that she's doing in the Philippines, another great idea. She's out there doing the work. And so this is what we're hearing about, and I love the coalition that you're putting together. You have a question. You give your name and what your question is.
Thank you, sir. My name is Kennedy Musa from Nigeria. My question is, with due respect to the panelists and participants equally, like the first speaker noted, how do we as participants coming from interfaith forums like this find a way to translate some of the resolutions we adopt and a way to get them implemented in our communities, in our societies, given the foundations of exclusivity that you find with the practice of our various religions and the larger-than-life roles that governments play in our lives. When you find a so-called secular society like Nigeria, you find some associations that are recognized by government. Participants in interfaith fora like this are not necessarily the leadership of those associations that are recognized by government. Now, even if they are, they cannot get through their associations to draw up laws or policies that can be implemented by government because the administration is supposedly secular. Now, so when you come to fora like this, everyone is convinced. Everyone is happy. I mean, you're my brother, you're my sister. But going outside the gates, how do you implement this? How do you, I don't know, take it up from there.
I think that's a good question, a very good question to end with. And what I would like to do is, and that's exactly why we're here, is how do we transform our communities, our countries, and our world? How do we truly become one family under God? How do we connect together? And that's a powerful question. And the moment we can get that answered completely, then we've solved all the problems. However, there are steps that I believe that we can take to get to that point. And I'd like to start with Dr. Babano and ask her if she could go ahead and tell us, based on your experiences and work, how could we address that? And I'd like to go back down to each one of you and give you about 45 seconds
thank
each.
You.
Sure.
Thank you very much. I remember the talk of Professor Caprara. He said, connect the dots.
Yes.
So the model that I have, if you are interested, give me your card if you have that has an email address, and we will continue to connect. I will just be very happy to share with you the model that we have in the Philippines. Thank you.
Thank you. Father Fagundes.
Transformation and change in the society or religion doesn't come from the crowd, it's individuals. And I, as a Catholic priest, was asking why the bishops don't do it, why the official church doesn't do it. A question came, who is the church? I am the church. And the last 20 years, I have been speaking these views in the church and outside the church, everywhere the same view. And they do respect, and I do have recognition. 20 years I'm doing it, and a lifelong option. We can change.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. For me, I have a different opinion. Number one, as I've said earlier, we have 21 different models that are practical and can be used in different process of engagement. First and foremost, most of us in this room, we are far away from our primary constituency. Our thinking capability, our understanding is too far away that there is a disconnection from what we think we thought of the world and what the ordinary person at the grassroots think about the world. Secondly, from my practical experience in the last 20 years, I come to realize that your truth of whatever you want to take, you have to take people from what they know to that which they know not. When you bring what they don't know into that, it will not be acceptable. Secondly, I realize in Africa and other parts of the world, you cannot draw a line between political issues and religious issues. Religion and politics, especially in Islam with the Muslims, religion and politics are intertwined. So the idea of saying drawing a sharp divide between this is political issue, we don't want you to bring your religion here, lock it up in the door, in the cupboard, and come in here, doesn't work. So therefore, that's why the issue of track 2 diplomacy come in. We know most of the problems are created by the political actors. If the political actors create the problem, what is the way forward? Is to have into public-private partnership. Can faith-based organizations partners indeed with the policy makers, helping them in creating policies that are more human-friendly, that are more sensitive to our values than the other way around? In my experience in Somalia, working in Somalia, or working in Iraq specifically, I can give you a practical experience. For example, a Christian priest following me to Somalia and working with me in Somalia. Myself and a reverend, my pastor, we went together to Somalia and we are working. And people say, oh, no, I say, no, you are human. We talk of the human angle. You bring the end product of spirituality into it. But you don't preach pluralism to the ordinary person. Religion is an identity. Religion is a community. It's a spiritual community which they connect from. By the time you are trying to derail them of that spiritual community, you are derailing them of their identity. And henceforth, they will close their heart against you. We'll be very happy to share more of this, either in Somalia, in our work in other parts of the world, that seem more monolistic, or even in Eastern Europe, in Bosnia-Herzegovina, how we work with the others. What make it, how does the ordinary person on the grassroots open its heart? I'm a grassroots, I work in the grassroots, what my people in Nigeria will call a slum. Talk of Tudunwada. Some will see it as a slum compared with the other GRA. But where I come from, and the language of the people is the language we need to learn as we are getting closer, go back to our primary constituency, learn the language of communications, connect from that particular atom, they will open their heart, and therefore you move forward. We are living example. It has worked in Nigeria. People are interested in reporting the negative, not the positive, especially our media. So there is a lot of positivity on the ground going on one-on-one, on intra-community, inter-community, religion been playing a very positive role. Yes, it can. And yes, we can change, but we must to begin, not our elitist point, but at the real, ordinary human point angle. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Malik.
Actually, I think the Imam has said it all already. I think I can bring it down to four issues I would emphasize, and I empathize. That's my view as well about these particular types of events. But I do realize that sometimes when we tend to look at the situation as one that has a solution, there must be some solution. We ignore the obvious things. There is no universal answer, and I think it's a strategy-based response. So my 4 points the 4 points I would make is, first, we have to recognize the root causes of whatever the problems are. And we have to recognize that identity politics actually does play a major role in these problems. And I'm very happy that the Imam has highlighted the issues that he sees, which I think draw parallels from all over the world. The second is, I think we must keep our objectives achievable. You know, we tend to reach for the stars, and I think that's wonderful. But in doing that, we tend to ignore all the other things that we could be achieving in very real and practical ways. Number 3, there must be multi-pronged strategies. We cannot assume ourselves to be the universal solution in ourselves. We must recognize that we play just possibly one role in a scheme of things that involve many actors. And we pick that role, and we decide based on that role what that achievable objective is. And lastly, I think when fashioning strategies, we must recognize that it must be from community up. There's a tendency for us to think, at least in sessions like this, from a top-down perspective. Because we're lucky enough, fortunate enough to be involved in these sorts of discussions, we tend to ignore that we, in many ways, come from very different backgrounds from those constituencies that we're trying to help in the first place. And if we don't take the measure of what's needed from their standpoint, then what sort of solutions can we possibly fashion for these communities in the first place? Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much. In closing this afternoon, we can look at some great leaders like Dr. Martin Luther King, Mahatma Gandhi, Nelson Mandela, and all of them had a passion to eradicate injustice and to bring people together. And they did it at a grassroots level. It starts with you and me. It's not the policymakers, it's not the top officials, it's you and I. And when we believe what we're talking about, I've always said that belief is an action word. If you believe it, you're going to do it. So if we truly believe in coming together and we begin to do it, then others will do it too. And there will be a movement that will go across your communities, country, and around the world that can really transform this great place that we all call home. So I want to thank Dr. Babano, Father Fagis, Imam Ishaf, messing up your name, I'm sorry, Imam Muhammad and Mr. Sawa. Let's give them a very warm welcome or thank you for their time. This concludes this afternoon's session.